Hello and welcome to this episode of Navigating the Waters, where I'm delighted to be joined again by our host, CEO and founder of River VC, the fabulous Stephanie Mckinney. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Kim?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I'm proper excited about today's episode, though, because we're going to really start to break down when we talk about doing due diligence, kind of what do we mean? What are people going to be asking for? Because you want to be able to really be ready, don't you? So that when you've got that, as you so eloquently put it, once you've got that yes commitment, that you can actually turn it quickly into getting the funds so that you can grow your business. So over to you.
Yes. So when you're face to face with an investor and they say yes, that doesn't mean tomorrow you're going to be wired the money. It's going to still take a process. Like, yes, we're invested in your idea, we're invested in your team, but we're going to do our due diligence. And due diligence is your background. Pretend like you're an investigator as a detective. You have to make sure that what they say in their pitch deck is true. You have to make sure that they're a legal company. So if the founder has that ready to go, the turnaround can be quicker. It can be an easier process if you can give them a data room where all these stuff are lined up for them. Like, okay, here's your finances, here's your incorporation, then it's easier for them. So we're going to dive into what you need besides a pitch deck to prepare for your investors.
Oh, I love that, because there's so much that you have to do in prep for that pitch deck, isn't it? But then I guess the pitch deck is the story.
Right.
And the due diligence is the reality, is the backing it up, isn't it? Making them see where you got what you've said from, and giving them confidence that therefore it's investable. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think the pitch deck is a broad overview of your company, and then the data room is a breakdown of each one. So your slides of your milestones is a breakdown of how that is, why that's going to be, what's going to be the driving force of that milestone. So it's really opening the floodgates for each slide of your team slide, of your corporation slide, of your finances, of all the slides in the pitch deck is just broken down into this data room that you can then hand over the committed investor.
I love that. So how do you get started with building your data room?
So some people start with like Google Docs. You can just have an email, use Google Docs. It's the easiest thing to keep all these files connected. So that's where I would start. And then I would break it down into 4 different topics. I would do your team, I would do the data, and then I would do like your intellectual, maybe five topics, your intellectual property. So your trademarks or your patent pendings, and then your legal and your finances. And we can dive into each one specifically, but those are the 5 that I would do: is team, data, intellectual property, legal, and finances.
I love that. And I know when we first got talking on these episodes, obviously your legals and your financials were kind of your critical, and your top hires were your legal and your finance people, weren't they? So let's start there, because that seems to follow the flow of kind of what we've talked about, how we're getting them together. So in that legal and financial piece, what types of things should we be ensuring that we've got there ready, that an investor is going to want to see?
So the point that you're able to receive investments, you should have some way to have manage your finances. There's QuickBooks. That's one that I tend to use. There's other methods where you can make sure that you're tracking what's coming in, what's coming out. You're going to need your profit loss statements. So that's what's coming in, what's coming out, where is money going, how's it flowing, your balance sheet, lying out your assets, making sure your company is held up by finances, and then your financial model, which is like your budget, your future expenses, how you run your revenue. So having those things are going to be critical in your finances packet. And there are different resources out there that you can plug these data in, and then it'll give you the Excel, because I know not a lot of people are Excel savvy, and it's not. And if you don't have an accountant yet, then it's not your area of expertise. So there are tools that you can plug in your data and get your profit loss statement, which is P&L, your balance sheet, and your financial model. But these are crucial when you first get an investor, because they want to see the numbers. They want to make sure that your slide saying, oh yeah, we're going to make 10 million by year 5 is correct and backed up by why, how, what's going to lead it, how has it been so far.
I love it. That's such great advice, because you want to be able to get all of those things in one space. And you're right, not everybody is Excel savvy. And not everybody likes the numbers. I deal with lots of business owners who, the minute you start talking, P&L and cash flow and kind of things, you see them glaze over and look horrified. They like the number at the end of the month, clearly, but it's not, it's not something that is their passion and their forte. So,
right. Which is why at the beginning we talked about having the first couple people that you really hire is accountant and a lawyer on retainer, because you're going to need these when you start getting other people's money involved.
Absolutely. So that's our financials. What kind of things do we need to cover in the legals that are in there?
Right. So in the US, you have to be incorporated. And a lot of the time, investors want to see a C corporation, which is just your legal standing with the government, saying that you're a legal company. You can make these transactions. You can do what you're proclaiming that you're doing. If you're a SaaS company, if you're a business company. And then after that, you're going to need a bank account, which is, I guess, financials, as well as making sure that the bank has done their due diligence on you.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, yes, you can have a bank account. We can, manage your money. And then your bylaws are crucial. How are you guys going to vote? What are you voting on? What do you require a vote to have? What do you require what's going to be a questionable thing that the board will have to vote on? Those are your bylaws, and those are crucial to get in the beginning, because you don't want to say, oh, well, we should have included that later, and you can amend them, but having the foundation of the bylaws is going to help build your company, because maybe only shareholders can vote on certain things, and that needs to be written out clearly for your investors.
I love that. So there's real clarity, therefore, on what's people's role and responsibility. What are they? On what basis are they committing and investing? So we've got our financials, we've got our legals.
Yeah, but there's more in legals.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that I'm not a lawyer. These are not lawyer advice. I'm not, that's not my area of expertise. But there are things that I look for as an investor, and other than the bylaws and the articles of corporation, are your stock purchase agreements, which is a document describing kind of how everything was sold to individuals and other entities. So kind of like your Rolodex of who else is invested in here. And then your cap table summarizing the current stock distribution for that company.
Okay, because you've talked about cap table before, haven't we, in one of these episodes? And am I correct in thinking that would basically say who gave us what investment and what we gave them in return for that investment? So percentage of shares or number of shares or whatever that looks like, and the kind of like the date. So it almost is like I'm guessing a bit like a record, isn't it, of everything that's going on, so that you can clearly see who owns what, when they owned it, what they got for it, so that you've got that clarity.
Exactly. That stock purchase and the cap table are really crucial to keep a finite, detailed record of, because you want to know, Joe Schmo or Sally Mae, and you want to know how much they have in what. And then you want to be able to showcase that to other investors so they know kind of what's left of the pie. Yeah. So having those are incredible to get from a lawyer, because the lawyer is going to help you write those out. The other investors are going to sign it, and then you need to keep those documents, maybe not in your data room that you send to investors, but the documents of the signatures in a file so you can all have it and back it up. Because computers crash, technology crashes. We all have had that day where nothing works. So back it up, hard copies, pack it up onto flash drives. Make sure you have copies of everything, because if you have all of it and then something happens and then you have none of it.
Yeah, that is such great advice. I've fallen foul to that once before, so I'm now neurotic. I now have everything backed up to the cloud and backed up to a hard drive and backed up something else. So that's like, I'm in triplicate. I've turned into my mum. I used to do the same. But that is all great advice. So is there anything else that we should be including in financials or legals, or is it really those are the main things?
Well, any document that you sign, your NDAs, anyone else signs, your board, all the board contracts that you have going out, make sure that those are all compiled so people can see who's on your board. That gives you a little bit more credibility. All your board meeting minutes. So when you are big enough to have your board meeting, make sure someone's taking some really good notes so you can then show, okay, that's what we talked about at our last meeting. Here's what we've come up with, and here's how we're implementing that decision. So having your board meeting minutes done so people can be caught up when they onboard on what's happened and how they can help the company go forward.
I love that. And within those board notes, it's making sure that you've captured as well as net decisions that were made. So that there's, again, that traceability of the fact it was consciously made. It didn't just happen. It was because the board discussed it, debated it, and then came up with a decision moving forward.
Exactly. And then with that, also, if you've done other rounds, maybe not in legal, maybe as a separate subfolder, the other rounds documents, showing them like, oh, we've done pre-seed for 5 million. Here's who's invested in that. Here's all their contracts. And it also helps you as the founder stay organized, because when you go from building the company to fundraising, you don't want to start all over or untangle the knot that you left behind. You want it all clear, concise, direct. So it helps your mental health. It helps you be aware of what's going on with your company. And like we talked about earlier, if you can't get out of your company and let your company run itself, this is one tool that would help. Is like, God forbid, if something happens, this data room has everything in it. There's backup on backup on backups. So making sure that you have this really saves a lot of time to getting that commitment from investor, but also saves a lot of mental time where you're not like, oh, did we put that document in? Did we put that other investor in? So this, I think, is really crucial to a founder, and making sure that they're able to do this from the beginning is going to help them in the future.
I love that. And that is so true, because I spend a lot of my time helping people put it into place later on. And it's so much harder to go back and start again and unpick it and get it out of their head. Because they've got so used to it now. Whereas, I say to people from day one, record everything that you're doing and then get it transcribed, even if you use a piece of software to transcribe it. But so you've got documented standard operating procedures for everything you do, because actually then they're replicable, aren't they? If you weren't here, somebody could pick them up and keep running the business for you. Exactly.
With that, also, securing it.
Yeah.
You don't want just someone else picking it up. You want specific people picking it up. So making sure it's a secure room. The backups are, told to people that really need to know. You know where they are, and they're not just like floating around in your purse somewhere on a disk. Making sure that you're able to safely and securely get all your information together in this room.
I love that. And one of the things that I get clients to also do is I talk a lot about doing everything with care. And one of the things that we get them to do is their care log. So who do they need to consult? Who do they need to be accountable? Who do they need to be responsible? And then who do they need to engage with on each thing? So that there's real clarity around who does what and when and why. But having that as a process from day one makes it so much easier for a founder to be working on a business, not in a business.
Exactly. And if you do this from day one, like you said, then when it gets bigger and when it gets harder, or, you're doing a lot of onboarding of investors and everyone wants to invest, it's going to be second nature to just go, okay, click, drag, put it in here, make a copy and share it. Yes. It's going to be a routine rather than something that you have to figure out. And having that repetition of doing it from the beginning is really important and vital when you have an overload of investors, or you're really trying to get all your information out there to people. It's going to be all right here. It's going to be quick and easy. And it's just going to save a lot of mental time as well as time.
I love that. So that kind of, I think, covers the majority of what we're saying. So, in the financials, it's everything around the financial viability of the business, from the cash flow through to your P&L, your balance sheets, your bank accounts, which
Right.
kind of segues a little into the legal. And then you've got your documents proving that you're a legal company, all of your contracts, all of your NDAs, anything that you've got that really is a legal document would go in there. And obviously also that cap table and that, so real clarity on who's got what invested in that business.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be the next area that you really want to go in and focus on? And we've talked, I know we've got the 5 headings, but where would you go next?
From here, I would probably branch out into staff, because it might be something of more folder that you open more often, because you might be onboarding, or someone may not see the vision anymore and offboarding. So, keeping those contracts together, how much they get, so you might want your employees to get some stake in the company. That document, a list of your contract workers, a list of your partners, making sure your employee agreements are there, their titles, their salaries. And this is something that, you can copy your data room, and you can also make a self data room. So you can give these ones to the investors, the data room, and you can give the self one to just making sure that you have all your connections, and you don't want to share everything with your investor just yet. So having 2 of them, just copy and paste, and then uploading more files onto your self one as you continue to grow is going to help. So that would be the staff one, who you're working with, what kind of contracts, agreements you guys have, their salaries, your team. That would be my next step, would be the team, the staff. Who are you partnered with? Have you employed? Also, I like to keep a list of what subscriptions you have. Just for myself, like I have the YouTube trial that I use for work. I have the QuickBooks, and just seeing like a list of where else our money is going. I know it's going to be in finances, but just like a list of, because you're technically employing them too. So they are a part of your staff. They are a part of your community. So just seeing like what else you have going for your company in a list, just quick and easy, so you can review it rather than going through your finances. I keep that in my staff folder because they are like a little employee. Like I look up QuickBooks almost every other day. So I like to see that. That just is a little snippet from me.
I know, I love it. And it makes such sense, doesn't it? Having all those things that we know we're going to have to go to. Like if you've got an employee handbook and things, putting those in there so that when you bring new members of the team on, they can get up to speed really quickly as well. Exactly. But investors like to see that, don't they? That kind of gives more credibility and more confidence.
Yeah, that would be in your self data room, is like your HR onboarding stuff. You could have that file right there. The HR person can go there, and it's quick and easy. You can just share that file with them, but you have the whole main everything. So having everything in these slides, I mean, technology has expedited and catalyzed everything that we've done. And why not use it to our best advantage and create these data rooms and these self data rooms, so we can make sure that we get that quicker turnover from the investor yes to the investor check. And then also making sure that our life is easier, where we can go, okay, we're onboarding a new person. Here's the file that you need to fill out. Here's the HR file you need to fill out. Here's an employee agreement. And it's all right there.
Yeah. It makes it so much easier if you've got it in a process, doesn't it? And then you've got something that you can use systematically. So we've got team and everything about our colleagues, our suppliers, the people that we're working on to do the business. We've got the financials and the legals. Where would you go next as an investor?
I would dive into the data folder. With this, it depends on what kind of company you have. If you have a SaaS company, if you have a business-to-business company, if you have a business-to-consumer or B2C, business-to-business is B2B. It depends on what you have is how these folders are going to break down. So it's going to be specific to your company. But a lot of the times investors want to see a sales pipeline, which is your potential sale opportunities as clients continue to grow with your company in different stages of buying. So let's say you have a subscription that's the basic standard one, and then how long does it take them to get the premium package? Or do they get the premium package? If so, why is that turnover happening? For a SaaS company, the metrics that you use your software and how well it's performing would be something, as well as if you have an app, how well that app is performing. If it's free, are they buying it? If it's money, are they paying for it up front? Your usage metrics, which is a way of tracking how your people use your product or service. So are they sharing it? If you give them an incentive to sharing it, are they more likely to share it? So the data room is more specific to your company. So that is just a couple examples of SaaS, of app, of subscription-based products, but it's more where you house a lot of the product itself, of what you're building, how it's working, how are the customers and clients bouncing off of it, how are they responding to it. That's where your data room is. And a lot of times that will help your projections. Like, okay, they bought the app and now they bought the premium package and now they're using our incentive to sell it to other people. So that is going to help you say, okay, in 5 months, we're going to have double our subscriptions. So that I would keep in your data room, just your projections, your customer acquisition cost. We talked about that. I know it will be in finances, but just having it in your data room to say, okay, we have to pay for our marketing team. We have to pay for our Facebook ads that go out. We have to pay for this. We have to pay for that to get X, Y, and Z customers, to get 1 customer, to get 10 customers, and then how that works. So this is the data room is like the how it works and the why it works and the what is it going to do kind of room.
Okay. I love it. So over here, and I know this is an Englishism, so it doesn't quite work across with my clients in America. Over here, we call that our MI. So it's our management information, all the information that you need to have to manage the business, to make the decisions. So like, where are your clients? How happy are they? How likely are they to recommend? What's your pipeline look like? What's your retention rates? All of those things that say this is really the nuts and bolts of being able to actually make informed decisions, isn't it, for the business?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what you called it. What?
We call it MI, so it's management information.
Okay, MI. Yeah, we call it metrics room or data room. But yeah, I like the MI. So making sure that you're able to, figure out how your company works, ins and outs.
I love it. Okay, so we've now gone through our financials and our legals. Then we've got into the team. Now we're really into the nuts and bolts of how the business works, the metrics, the MI from him and where I am. Where would you go next?
So I would go to your intellectual property. I would go to if you have any patents, if you have any grants, if you have any trademarks, just more on the overarch of your company. Patents, they're broken down into different types, so making sure you're specific on what kind of patent you have. Provisionally patents, they're a little bit easier, but they do take a lot of time. So making sure your investor knows exactly what kind of patent, if it's done, if it's in process, updating it, making sure that they know, hey, we got an update, here's the email or here's the document. Trademarks, if your brand is trademarked, make sure you get that information done. A lot of times I do it with incorporation. So if you do a corporation, then later just do a trademark, because that does take a little bit of time. Your design guide, which is, how you use your brand across other marketing materials. I keep a sub tab under intellectual property as social media. I keep it as, Facebook's been doing okay, but we've gotten a lot of traction through LinkedIn. We've gotten, some good responses on Instagram. So just kind of having a social media or marketing agent update that sub folder to see where it's going, how are we getting traction, as well as, your MI that we talked about, your data room. I keep that in under intellectual property because it is your ads. It is your, for the most part, it should be your video. It should be your post. It should be your picture. So just keeping it in there. So when you go into the future, you're like, oh, well, that's actually our video, not yours. And this is why. And we've had this since 2021. So I keep that under intellectual property. It's just like a social media brief update. It doesn't have to be updated monthly, but at least quarterly is a good.
I love that. And it's so useful because actually, we put out all this content, and people get lost almost in that content creation, and then you suddenly realize that something that you created ages ago is exactly what's needed right now, and it's like you can go through it then and collect it and put it back out there with a new thought that is, I did this 3 years ago and it struck me that it's still true because here's how it relates to today's what's going on in the world, but so that people see the value of it. But good advice is good advice, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And when you're doing in the beginning, if you just upload that file, like we said, it's just repetition. It's just like, okay, I did my scheduled post and here's all the stuff and here's all the content, just in case that subscription no longer works or it's not uploading, you have a backup on backup. So keeping that folder updated, especially when you're the founder and you're managing everything in the beginning, it'll help you in the future when you turn it over to a social media expert or a marketing expert. You're like, here's all the materials that we've used if you want to, refresh and reuse them.
I love that. Such great advice. So we've gone through 4 of the 5. So tell us about the last one.
The last one. So we've done team, we've done data, we've done intellectual property, legal, and finances. Which one are we missing? We did legal, we did finances, we did team, we did
intellectual property. We did. Sorry, it's my fault. We've done all 5 because we did legal and financials together. I think I created them as one instead of the 5. But you're right. No, we have done all 5, and that really helps. So what we're saying to people is, for me to summarize, check out my understanding, is that we start off with our financials. We really start to look at the numbers, what is driving the business, what are actually going to demonstrate the investability and the likely return. We've got the legals to just check that we are who we said we are, that we are legal and responsible, that we are doing, we're doing things in the right way. I'm guessing dependent on your industry and your sector, that might also include any regulations that you've got to be adhering to and demonstrating that you are meeting those requirements. And then we move over into the team. So what are we doing with our people? Who are our people? What are their backgrounds? Again, within that self element, you'd have your own HR piece, so that we're being really clear on roles and responsibilities, what we're asking people to do, what the processes are, what the employee handbook things, all of those would sit in there. Then we're moving over to the data room, which metrics or MI. So all of the things that are going to help us understand how the nuts and bolts of the business is working. So everything from your sales pipeline all the way through to your retention process and everything in between. So almost that cradle to grave, isn't it, of your business, that there's, from a customer first coming in all the way through to, and if you were to ever lose them. And then into that intellectual property. So that can be anything from your trademarks, from your patents or patent pending, depending on who you are, but all the way through also to everything about you and your brand. So everything that we put out when we're creating content is our intellectual property. It's something that we have created ourselves because we've added in some of our thoughts, some of our knowledge base. So I love the whole idea of having that subfolder around that social media, because that is really how we're showing up in the world as our brand and as ourselves, isn't it?
Exactly.
So there's quite a lot, but all of those things, I can see how, rather than it just being done for becoming investor ready for that due diligence, is actually a great way of structuring your organization anyway, and giving you that mental space to be confident that your business is effective, is running well, and help you spot if there's any anomalies or gaps.
Exactly. And when you have that investor meeting, I mean, definitely put your pitch deck or your one pager so they can share it and give them that opportunity. Like, this investor, deck is for you. and here's all the information, but please don't share that information, but you can share the one pager and the pitch deck. I also forgot to mention, if you're in a med tech and your intellectual property being FDA approved, if you're in the process of being FDA approved, would be something that would go under that folder as well. So making sure that everyone sees that you're trying to get that drug or that use to be approved for the masses.
I love that. Such great advice, and always packed full of insight.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Stephanie. I am really looking forward to the next episode, because we continue to help people get ready for investment. And thank you for letting me be along for the journey.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And we are going to have a blog about this later as a literal checklist, making sure it'll have the title, the folder, the subfolders. So those of you who are trying to write it down, scrambling, don't worry. The blog will be coming out shortly of the breakdown of, your checklist on what you need to have in your data room. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim, for joining us. And until next time, have a good one.
Take care. Bye-bye.